When we finally engaged with the attorney, he goes, look, best advice, keep a level head. You're going to have extreme highs and extreme lows on the exact same day or day after day. Try and keep a level head. And I grinned at him as if he was saying something, oh, you probably tell all your clients this, but it turned out to be 100% true. It was emotional. It was an emotional roller coaster. Suzanne has her own business, so she kind of dealt with some of the stories I would tell her. I would bring the frustrations home. She's more in the business now, but because she handles all the accounting. But Danny, I'm like, keep running the company. He's very much of a data and finance guru. And so I said, I need this type of report going back 3 years. So I would rely on him for reporting that the bank was requesting or helping me find documents. So I was in deal mode and I'm like, Danny, can you run the company? And I relied on my managers to run the company as well as possible. I did bring in sales during that time, but yeah, I have a great team of managers, and Danny ran the company while I was doing this.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Scott Schaper. Scott is a serial entrepreneur currently serving as the president of RSM Marketing, a full-service marketing agency based in Lenexa, Kansas. RSM serves hundreds of customers in the Midwest, serving the construction, contractor, and subcontractor industries. Prior to RSM, Scott founded Unravel Digital in Kansas City, providing web design and web app development to his Kansas City clientele. Prior to that, he worked in several technology companies during the dot-com boom as project manager and in other technology roles. Scott holds dual degrees in psychology and business administration from the University of Kansas. You can learn more about Scott at rsmconnect.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Scott.
Scott, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, excited. We're recording here February 7th, 2025, and it's the Friday before the Super Bowl, so we're both based in the Kansas City area. I believe we're both in Lenexa, Kansas, so there you go. When I do these episodes close to the Super Bowl, Scott, I put the guests on the spot, especially since Kansas City's been in their last 3 years. Who's winning and what is the final score?
I got to go Chiefs, and I'm going to go 30-24.
All right, there you go. You heard it live there. Place your bets on DraftKings and use promo code The Corporate Couch. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, let's start with a fun question. Well, the first one was good, prediction, but even people know you fairly well, Scott. What one thing would surprise them about you?
That I have a shy side. As a leader, I tend to be, I don't know, I can be boisterous, vocal, opinionated, but sometimes I'm kind of forcing that a little bit, and I do have a bit of a shy side to me. People would be surprised to know that.
Have you done Myers-Briggs assessment? Like, are you an introvert, extrovert?
ENTP.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got the classic E. There's
Yeah.
no problem there, but I just every once in a while, maybe it's just with my age, I should probably retake it and see if I'm a little bit more balanced on that
Yeah.
metric. But yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I just interviewed Erica Rooney, a keynote speaker, chief people officer, author, podcaster, and she's, you watch her speaker reel, she's just great, and she goes, I'm an E, but I need to once I'm doing that, I got to go in a cave somewhere to just to get back to
Yeah, I think it's a
that energy.
response mechanism
Yeah,
like that. I'm
yeah,
so on so much, especially
yeah.
with sales and talking to people day in day out, that sometimes I just need to really shut it off and just crawl into a shell a little bit.
Yeah. And you grew up in St. Louis?
Yeah, I'm very early Chicago, and when I was little, maybe 6 or 7, my family got relocated. My dad's job got relocated to St. Louis, and so I spent all my formative years were in St. Louis all the way up to college.
What was fun for you growing up? What you loved doing?
I remember that when I wasn't in school, I was on my bike. And so there was a large neighborhood of kids. And it's funny, I just drove through my old neighborhood over the weekend. I was in St. Louis and I decided to go over there. It's a parking lot now for a large
Oh,
industrial
jeez.
complex.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I was on my bike constantly, and it was those days in the 70s and early 80s when we would disappear, and we just knew to be back by 5. My dad got home from work, and we sat down to dinner, and so I could ride to the zoo, I could ride to back to school, just meet my friends all over town, no helmet, just kind of
Right.
free for all playing, and getting ourselves into a little bit of trouble here and there.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah, I think you know, similar age demographics like we're in. It's yeah, I mean, I get that constantly. People, go, they play all day, come home for dinner type thing.
Right.
My kids couldn't go across the street without me monitoring. I had ankle braces on my kids. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so any aspirations growing up? Like, did you want to be an astronaut, police officer, CEO? What was your anything like that?
I was surrounded, honestly, I was surrounded by a couple people, especially when I got to teenage years when I started thinking about this. My sister married a guy who owned his own business, and I just kind of worshiped him. He had the first car phone I ever saw. He had the pager, and I loved the tech of owning your own business, right? I just thought I just revered that guy. He died tragically in a car
Oh,
accident.
geez.
But his name was Scott as well. And he had a effect on me. And I went to work for him, back when I was 16, 17, I needed a
Wow.
job. He had a printing and fulfillment marketing company and print marketing. And so I remember being in front of a large table of printed material, assembling it into something for direct mail outbound. And I did that and I made a good hourly wage and made some money, but I just got to see. I remember when we had a great job come in, he'd order pizza for everybody. And I thought that was just the coolest thing when we got
Right.
pizza at work. I would think business owner.
Yeah.
I think early I went through doctor, actor type of stuff. And then when I went to college, I started studying architecture and got out of that very quickly and just went full on business.
I know you graduated from University of Kansas. I know they have a great architecture program. Did you go there for architecture and then switch your majors?
Right after high school, I did 2 years at junior college in St. Louis. And then because my best friend's family got moved to Kansas City, I thought, why don't we just go to KU? That's where we both applied and got accepted. And
Right.
it was purely because of that. But I started studying architecture already at the junior college level,
Okay.
drafting, things like that. And I had done some of that in school,
Yeah.
technical drawing. And so I started down that path. And then when we started looking at KU, I'm like, they have an excellent architecture program, but that wasn't the reason I was going there for a social reason. I'm glad I did too.
Yeah. Rock chalk. There we go. So when did you pivot? You graduated with a double major, psychology and business administration. What was the
Right.
reasoning? Business administration makes sense because you wanted to, own your own business or whatever. You get your role model from your family member. But what about psychology? What was that about?
I've told people this, my superpower is empathy. I have a deep empathy very quickly with people. I feel like I'm in the people business, but architecture wasn't landing for me. It was a lot of technicality that I wasn't drawn to. And business was, I don't know, it was either an easy pivot or I had friends that were in that school and I started going down that route. Psychology was very interesting to me. And when I got into school, I was looking for an easier way to get my business degree. And this is a real story. They had this section of education called advanced business electives for which you needed 9. credit hours. So it's usually 3 classes to get your advanced business electives out of the way. They called them the ABEs. And they said that requirement is waived to 5 hours only if you have an approved minor. Well, I looked at the approved minor and psychology was one of them. Well, I was always taking psychology classes out of interest. And it turns out I had enough that qualified as a minor. So my advanced business electives turned into 5, and there was one class called Management of Small Business that was 5 hours, and it was not a classroom. I was embedded with a small business.
Nice.
And that really was the turning point for me, is I had no classroom time and I finished all my advanced business electives. So I thought it was a little bit of a hack. And then I needed 2 extra semesters to finish the psychology degree. So I did a couple summers and 1 semester to get both of them. I thought, I'm here, I might as well go. I didn't have an aspiration to get a master's at the time. So I thought, why don't we just stick around and get these 2 degrees and get those under my belt?
Yeah, nice.
But it was really a combination of trying to hack the system and follow some of my current interests.
Yeah, interesting. So I always love to hear how people get their first job post college. How'd you get the job and what was it?
It was at First Watch. I managed First Watch, the restaurant chain. It's a big, popular breakfast and lunch chain in Kansas City. There's 150 of them. I worked there to earn money. I loved the management. I really loved the owner. He was a mentor to me. And he was opening up a concept that included catering. And he goes, do you want to run this for me? And I said, yes. He goes, I have another person I'm bringing in to run this. And if you can get a restaurant to work, you can get anything to work because it's a business of pennies. And I was taught by very, very smart people. I got lucky. It wasn't, it was purposeful the way we managed it, and it was profitable. And I just remember every bit of it.
I saw early on in your career pivoted that you were like a system administrator, and then you did some 2 project manager stints. So you kind of getting more into the less creative side and getting into the kind of the technical side. Talk about that transition.
Yeah, a restaurant manager eventually turns into a halftime babysitter. So you're wearing all sorts of hats. I love the management of it. But the one thing that I will say about First Watch that I still carry with me is there was 10 steps. And if you followed those 10 steps, you made the most money of anybody. And we tried to get people who, when we hired for I'm talking about being a server, when we hired for a new server, for example, we'd rather get somebody who never served than somebody who was a veteran server, like with Red Lobster, because we had to unlearn all their bad habits and get them to follow these 10 steps, which were based on experience. So when I left there, I went to Baird Kurtz and Dobson, and I had a friend that was a CPA there, and they needed someone for tax season. And I thought I'd take a leap because the money was great. I did make a leap for money. I went into their tax department as a tax prep, and which is kind of weird, but he took the accounting test for me, and they're like, wow, you did excellent. You can come on in. So
Wow.
again, I hacked my way into that position. By the end of tax season, I basically worked 90 hours a week and made a bunch of overtime. But there was no job after April 15th, except they needed someone in the pension department. And I went into their pension group and became an ESOP accountant. They trained me to do that. Their software just did not work for ESOPs. And so I built it on Excel for them. And it's the same program they use today.
Wow. Interesting. And then you were in the .com boom and bust, looked like with geo access and freight quote. So what,
right.
In kind of project management, talk about that time period.
Yeah, so I got a lot of financial education. I mean, I love designing our own 401k. That all came from BKD. And then system administration, I became a technical expert there, which was really great. I got to solve a lot of problems for people, but had friends that were recruiters, and Freight Quote was looking for a unique position, and it was called an API integrator. I knew those terms. And so I interviewed for it and got that position. It was, again, another lift in salary. But essentially, freightquote.com, everybody knows them now, but back then there was only 20 people there.
Yeah. But yeah, very famous company in Kansas City. Tim Barton was the founder. He made a lot of money when he sold to C.H. Robinson. They are in the trucking business.
Yeah, online freight brokerage. and I was there very early. And they basically had a system using an API that you could query the database for freight quotes for freight. If you were an eBay or any type of online shop, you can round trip and get quotes from LTL quotes. Things like package quotes were already in place, but this was the first one you can get a trekking quote live data. So I traveled up and down the coasts, both east and west, and got .coms to integrate into that technology. So that
Yeah.
was my job, is to help companies integrate and maintain the documentation of the API. There was a couple different versions of it. And then I got recruited over to GeoAccess, which was medical data, and was a project manager over there.
Yeah, and I did want to mention that, about First Watch and their hiring process. That's so interesting because I don't know if Southwest Airlines is still like this today, but I know Southwest in the old days when they were coming up, they didn't want any flight attendants from Delta, United, et cetera. They wanted to teach them the Southwest Airlines way. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. First Watch had that same philosophy. Um, yeah, so it looked like you founded Agile Core like when you were young. It looked like maybe in your 30s,
Yeah.
early 30s. Talk about that.
So I went, GeoAccess eventually got bought by United Healthcare, got bought by a subsidiary of United Healthcare. And I went from being an employee of 200 to being an employee of 60,000.
Right.
And I wasn't crazy about that. Freight Quote needed a different type of integrator position. It was pretty rare to have two different stints at Freight Quote, but the price was right, and I engineered a severance and flipped over back to Freight Quote for a while. And then it was a little bit more cutthroat when I went back. There were 700 people there at this time, so you can see the dramatic growth that they've had in a few years. And I left there, got fired, and I thought I thought I'm gonna start something in freight, and it was in the compliance area. I was good at building websites, decent at building websites and solving companies' problems. And so I hooked up with a compliance company out of Topeka that I met serendipitously, and we began creating some compliance software under the brand of Agile Core. I kind of encapsulated about 2 years there. Oh, this is 2004 through 8, and we puttered along for a while. I puttered along for a while, putting food on the table, and then I had a familial relationship with a coder, and we joined forces, and we did some consulting, and this while we were on the side chasing down this compliance software for trucking companies, and it's a great company now. It's called IFTA Plus, and IFTA is basically to napkin sketch it out. It's a way to turn a box of receipts into a tax return, a specialized tax return called a fuel tax return. There's 50 different tax returns. Every state has their own, but it's essentially napkin sketch math, but it's tedious for trucking companies, especially if you only own one truck. We
Yeah.
made that process very easy. IFTA stands for the International Fuel Tax Arrangement. And we built this, and it eventually, as we started getting traction and making money, it's funny when you're poor, everybody's completely aligned, arm in arm against the world. But as soon as it starts rolling in, we started having problems, personality problems, and we took our ball and went separate ways. And now Geotab, a very large provider in the transportation space, eventually acquired IFTA Plus,
Yeah.
and they own it now, and it's a great product. But yeah, that was the funny thing about that name. As I was incorporating it, we didn't have a name for it, and my lawyer goes, "What are you going to call it?" And I said, "I don't know." He's like, "What about IFTA Plus?" I'm like, "Yeah, sounds good. Let's write that down and incorporate." So the lawyer named the company IFTA Plus back then, and it stuck.
That's
So
funny.
that was all under the Agile Core arena, and
Yeah.
then Agile Core essentially dissolved away. But by that time, I had really gotten decent at the web and talking to customers and being a solutions provider and finding my own business voice. And that's when I went and started Unravel 2008,
Yeah.
Unravel Digital.
Okay. We'll talk about Unravel, but I have to hear why you got fired at Freight Quote the second time.
Well, I didn't know it at the time, but I was the very first one. I thought it was isolated, like there was something against me, but I felt like I felt like the manager who wanted me gone had to go through the manager I had a great relationship with, my direct report, and he let me go. And I still have stayed friends with Terry this whole time, and not Terry Forgery, a guy Terry. And then a whole wave of layoffs came right after that.
Okay.
So I think I was part of a batch. I may have been a little bit more purposeful than saying expense cuts or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think 15, 20 people, which was 10% of the workforce at the time,
Right.
had to exit in the ensuing months. Um, so yeah, whatever. I had, it was one of those things where I had my resignation letter ready for many months. And
Right.
I was redrafting it, thinking one of these days I was itching to start my own business. I really had that. And what's funny is a whole lot of things coalesced in my life. Personally, I'd gotten divorced, and that was pretty devastating. I think that contributed to my performance at work. But then being pushed out the door was something I wouldn't do myself. But my ex had a great job and great insurance, and it actually gave me some leeway that I wasn't just supporting the whole family. So in part, that kind of personal um, darkness kind of gave me some permission to step forward into my own business, and that's what I did.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I remember when the position I was at when I was going through my divorce, and it wasn't even contentious divorce, but God, it's just you're just. I mean, you're not the. It's just like if you get 3 hours of sleep and try to work the next day, you're not as good if you have 8 hours of sleep, right? So, yeah, it's a terrible time. It's emotionally draining. So it gave me a lot of empathy towards people that were going through it, that were under, that worked for me, or we were peers or whatever. It's just so hard. So you're around 30 years old. You're founder of this company. It's the crazy post.com boom. But like, what were some of the big learnings and surprises you had? Like, oh, I'm the guy. I'm the head of the company, or the founder. What was like, oh, wow, I didn't know this.
I had a feast or famine cycle because I started Unravel in 2008 and 9. So what was I getting into was, you know, Obama was coming in, and there was the great, what did they call it? The Great Recession at that time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I had a lot of small projects, website work, essentially web development and web apps that I could make. But I was the guy. I was selling, producing, billing, everything. So and it was a lot of great contracts. Were not I wasn't getting yeses on, and I wasn't getting nos on. And so the whole from 2009 to 11 was very much limbo land with business. And then the whole thing lifted, the cloud lifted in 2011. And that's when I remember really starting to hire, getting people in place, building an organization. Also, I thought it was temporary. Like I thought that I would be making websites for company to put food on the table till I figured out the next thing. Well, the next thing was just more and more and more and more.
Right. Yeah.
So for 10 years, and then I started growing. I started having I got worked my way up to 5 or 6 employees, a salesperson. We did more than just websites. We started down the path of monthly recurring revenue, which obviously is the name of the game in tech world. And just getting better and better at saying yes and pleasing the customer essentially, and forming some cultural. I mean, sometimes it's just the culture of get it done, get it built, get it out and go.
Right.
But eventually, when it becomes when it becomes more than you, you got to start thinking of your people and your culture more than the business, because it is the business.
So you Unravel Digital, and then at some point there's a pivot, and I don't know, this is part of the whole merger acquisition part of your story, but you at some point become the head of RSM Marketing. So talk about that transition.
Um, in 2016, I got a call from a company in Missouri, and they said, "Hey, we would like to acquire a company in Kansas City. We have a great footprint in Missouri. We want to conquer some of your area of Kansas without starting from scratch over there. Maybe we can join forces." And I was very much flattered by that. After that was 2016. So after 8 years of being in business, I had developed a recurring client base, and we traded financials, went and met each other, and found no chemistry. Had to do a lot of adjusting and asterisking and redlining of my P&L. Like, this is, I had a loose business. I ran it very loosely, and it was a mom and pop business, right? It was just whatever I needed that it provided. So after that, I said, oh my gosh. And I remember thinking, Suzanne, my wife, who owned it with me, I want to tighten the books up. I want this to be mean and clean 2016. That's our goal for this year, is to clean the books so that if this happened once, it's going to happen again. And it took 8 years for the first time, but it's going to happen again in the next couple of quarters. I just had this feeling that if one person found us, then we're on the radar to be found again. So we cleaned and cleaned. And I said, my goal is that when someone says, let's take a look at your P&L, I want to pull that off the printer and lay it in front of them with no explanation. So we started becoming much more financially disciplined, separating off any type of personal stuff, just paying myself an appropriate payroll amount, et cetera, just really lining up what is expected out of a company this size. I think we were $600,000 at the time, not a crazy amount of money. So then in 2017, I got another call from an attorney, and this is the power of networking. I met this attorney networking. We had a great relationship. We traded a few, referrals, things like that, as you do. And then she called me and said, I found a company in Wichita, and they said the exact same thing the first company did. They have a few clients in Kansas City. They lost their Kansas City person. They would like to find a small company that is like-minded. And that company was RSM. We met in her office a few days later. They drove up from Wichita. They started in 2009 in Wichita. So we're very much on the same track. They were a few million dollars. So they were 3-4 times bigger than us. So met with them. We got along like schoolgirls. And I mean, we were just giddy and lots of laughter and connection. And we kept stepping forward. About 90 days into that process, this was spring of 2017, they called me and they said, we need to put a pause on this. We have a current partner that would like to be bought out, and he doesn't want to transact during that buyout. We have the cash to buy him out. This is going to take 90, 120 days. But I think after he leaves, we're going to have a much tighter structure to really talk about our merger, but we need to do it the right way and just pause this for 90 days. Do you mind waiting? Yes, no problem. Take the time you need. And my friend, the attorney, gave me this advice because we had already started trading numbers. And I remember him, the managing partner, saying, hey, we're not going to buy blue sky. We're going to do straight math. Here's how much you're bringing in. Here's how much we're bringing in. That's the math. That's the ownership split. That's what we're doing going forward. We're not going to charge you for blue sky, and we're not going to buy it. So if that's a problem. So I said, okay, not knowing any different. But what she told me after the pause started, she goes, hit the gas. Make sure that you are doing everything you can to grow. Show them what that weight will cost them. And she goes, by the way, 90 days could turn into 6 months. You don't know how long that's going to be. You operate like this is never going to happen. So hit the gas. And so I really did that. I started hitting the gas. I raised my prices. I tightened up the books even more. And I thought, if this picks up in September, great. If it picks up next year, great. So we get all the way around to a year later. I hear nothing. So it's spring of 2018. I pick up a great client, a manufacturer here in town. And I don't take startups, Jeff. So generally speaking, I'm accepting a client from another service by another agency or another individual. And so I'm the networker galore, right? So I'm like, I always make buddies, friends, introductions to that new company. Go meet them. They're in my space. I want to be friends with them. So I want to accept this client from them in a respectful way, et cetera, et cetera. So I started talking to Danny Humphrey, who was with Grape, GRAPE, like Apple, but Grape Marketing. He was a small company. He was great at SEO, which search engine optimization, a weakness of ours. And I said, hey, you seem like an excellent service provider and a great individual. Why is this company firing you?
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
And I said, hey, you seem like an excellent service provider and a great individual. Why is this company firing you? And he told me, they're not firing me. They actually offered me a job to come in and work for them. They fired my toxic partner who I just got rid of. So I lost an account over my bad partnership. So I went back to the client. We were talking about their project. I had inherited the work. And I said, what happened with Danny? I talked to him, getting your access to the website and stuff. They're like, oh, we love Danny. We offered him a job here. We couldn't stand his partner, so we had to get rid of him. We got all sorts of lies and totally the same story. So I end up talking more to Danny spring of 2018. And I said, why don't you keep the SEO? Because we're not going to do any better than you are. We love doing the web. We're web developers. And he's like, I hate doing the web. So I said, I'm going to keep you as a sub on this job. Keep doing the SEO. I'll bill it out. I'll make sure you get paid what you were being paid before. And so after that job, we just became fast friends. And we said, let's do this together. So we merged July 1 of 2018. Again, it was just him and a salesperson. I picked him up. He added a few $100,000 right there because I accepted his 12 clients, which was all recurring. So it was a small inorganic roll up. And I thought this is going to be great. And I said, hey, by the way, I have this thing pending here on the side. I don't know if it'll turn into anything, but this is what happened last year. And I'm talking about the RSM conversation. And then he called back summer of 2018. RSM, they said it took us 15 months. And I got to learn close up why that exit took so long. And so now I have a little merger under my belt and a conversation about an owner exit that maybe was a little hostile, but it worked. But I got to learn that. I got to learn about some debt dispositions in a company. So I started at this point. I was thinking about joining Vistage just to up my business acumen. So I said, okay, well, what Danny offered was growth packages, marketing packages that were, so my new business partner, that were thousands per month and higher. And I didn't have that. And so I went back through my entire portfolio of clients and started selling these larger packages, things that made sense. So they started buying them. So 2017 and 18 were growth years for us, right during that merger conversation with RSM or acquisition. And so when we did get to the table again, we were much more comfortable saying, look at the growth, the tilt up of the last 2 years. That's going to continue. If it doesn't, we won't charge you. But if it does, we want consideration for it. So we did an ownership earnout that lasted 3 years that had a tipping point on it that says if you don't hit the 25% mark for your market, none of the ownership, you gotta at least grow 25%. And then if it does go over 25%, then you can earn additional ownership. And that ownership can only come from one place, and that's the owners in Wichita. So it's, there's 100% of the marbles in the jar, and you're taking it out of the same jar and putting it into a different pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's how the merger with RSM happened. And I'll kind of pause there because I kind of broad stroked a lot of that.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So many questions for me that I have. So starting in 2016, with kind of the first company that you had no chemistry with, and you wanted to get some financial discipline, all the way to the 2019 that you just ended with, where you're at in the kind of the evolution. Like who helped you be better in financial discipline, or did you seek out other help in terms of, hey, I'm looking at
merging and I'm or somebody's going to acquire me, like did you have a mentor or an advisor during all this?
During 16 to 19, no, I was winging it. I was winging it on the financial discipline. I could see that we were, we weren't pulling money out of the company in a way that was respectful to the P&L. I knew we were operating outside of the norm. Remember all that financial discipline I learned at BKD kind of was like there. I was like, I
Right.
could read a balance sheet and financial statement and kind of do all that. So I just knew that I knew the adjustments and the explanations I had to say, like, like basically saying I have higher profit than what this shows. Why do you say that? Well, because of this, that wouldn't be part of the. So I just felt like I had my tail between my legs explaining all that. And I didn't like that feeling. I really wanted to be proud of our financial performance. I wanted to say it and I wanted to show that number on the P&L. So, the end of that story is essentially on 7/1 of 2018, I merged with Great Marketing, and on 12/31 of the same year, we merged with RSM. So I did two mergers in 1 year, big step ups. And I always say that business growth doesn't look like a flat line like this, only if you zoom way out, but they're big stair steps.
Right.
And you hit a wall for a year until you realize, oh my gosh, we've been facing a wall, which is the riser of a stair. You have to go up to here to get to the next level. And so that's what happened is we've been stair stepping ever since. And we're at one right now. We're getting up another riser right now to get to a $10 million level.
Wow, it's fascinating. I mean, that whole mergers, acquisitions, buy, sell businesses, I know a little bit about it because I do some work with Exec HQ, and they have they call it the multiple practice, where enterprise value, business value, the value of a business is the profit, EBITDA, whatever, times the multiple of whatever the multiple of that industry is, and the multiples a range, right? But yeah, it's fascinating. There's so many components that go into this, what you went through. So
The second merger there was a lot of dirty, dusty corners of the corporate. There's a lot of more moving parts in the financial and the balance sheet, remnants of old piles of money from this thing that wasn't documented well, a little pile of money, a little loan we made, the interest accruing because of that. And there was more little knots to unravel or untangle. And I just didn't do that well. I thought it was, again, straight line math, and it wasn't. Merging a $500,000 company with a $200,000 company is different than an $800,000 company and a $3 million company.
right.
It's different, and especially longevity. It's kind of like you move out of the house after 15 years. You're like, I forgot this basket of stuff was even here. It's remnants of the past that you're digging through. And we did learn that as much financial discipline as the founders of RSM did impose, there were still lots of dead bodies around the financials. Part of that merger was, look, guys, we're older than you. They had 5 years on us, roughly. They said, we want to be out in 3 to 5 years. We're hoping that you guys take it over. Let's move toward that. We kind of did that 5 years and 2 months. Is exactly how long that took to do that buyout.
And that brings us to present, that the whole buyout thing.
That happened February 29th of 2024.
Wow.
That was the 5 year mark.
Wow. We'll talk about that process then. What was the learning? How was the buyout? I mean, was it was a win-win
Yeah.
type thing?
So the math of the merger turned out to feel muddier and muddier as it went into practice. So that transfer of ownership, that award for growth each year, we hit that 25% each year. And you have to really define what the Kansas City market means. And they said, hey, if Kansas City grows by 25%, formula, formula, formula. But it turns out that was difficult to define. Like Kansas City brought a certain way of doing advertising. And so that was our practice. So what if a Colorado company came to the website and said, we want this type of advertising? It was for Kansas City to fulfill. Was that a Kansas City growth? We didn't know. We didn't specify. And so
Right.
we had a lot of hard arguments about it. What if someone just came to the website and they said, there was just a lot of murkiness. So I learned that spending time with seasoned professionals to mark that stuff out and play out some of those scenarios with the right language, you're going to either spend that time with that attorney up front or that broker, or you're going to fight about it later.
Right.
We ended up arguing about it over some very tough partner meetings when it came time to what did last year bring, how did it work, what was the growth, and what's the ownership transfer. There was a lot of the math that was wrong. At one point, we had to go back. We found a mistake in the math, a mistake in the original, and we went back in time, recorrected it, and reformulated 2 years of time and refiled tax returns to correct it all. We're like, it's just accountant time and lawyer time, but we did correct it. The end result was our initial ownership was stated too high. So it should have started lower, and our growth percentages were stated too low. And so we just had to redo it. We decided, this is worth it to get it right. It's only ours, let's get it right. So I think it was part my naivety. I didn't have the right attorneys in place. I just hired an attorney to say red light, yellow light, green light, everything in this contract. What's problematic? What should I be asking? But it wasn't somebody who would dig through the language and say, you're going to be trapped on this later. So I didn't do the legality right. Call it due diligence of the merging. I didn't do that right. So all that to answer your question, how did it go? Not awesome. It was hard, but Mike and Bruce, my partners in Wichita, decided, hey, let's put it onto the market. And I fully supported this. Let's put it on the market and see what the market has to say. And we went in with, a lot of excitement and a lot of preparation. We spent a lot of time prepping. And for 2 years, we got 4 bites, which is fine. I thought that was a fair amount of bites. And everybody, after really opening up the hood and looking in, made very low offers or ghosted us or just stopped the process. So we got fish on the hook that let go. And it turns out that was really the voice of the market saying your company is not worth that. I started really, as my leadership and kind of my power in the company grew, I started getting a sense that these books are not in order. Some of these numbers, I don't know how they got there. And when I started untying all those knots, I started revealing some loose ends that never got wrapped up properly. It's very loose. So I think that the old owners ran it very much mom and pop in some respects and ran it professionally in other respects. And so that was difficult because every knot had to be untied, re-examined under a microscope, and relitigated. That's what we meant. I know, but that's not what it says. That was the spirit of the agreement.
Right.
And so we had to negotiate 100 different things, maybe 20 different things on why something happened the way it did. We didn't put a note in place when we loaned the company that money. We started accruing interest over here at the lender, but not on the books of RSM. And I'm like, some things had to be dropped and everybody had to swallow their pride. Sometimes it was tough.
Right.
So once the company couldn't be sold or was less likely to be sold after looking at that market voice, then me and Danny and my wife, Suzanne, we decided let's make a bid for the company. And starting there, that took 20 months.
Wow.
So it was tough. And we had COVID in between there too.
Just minor pandemic that happened.
COVID was great. We came together. By the way, my old partners, I'm still friends with them. And they were respectful the entire way. And that was the difference. I think that it got heated. There was a lot of sparks sometimes. It was part of our culture. We respected the process. They stayed at the table. They kept talking calmly. And it was, I give them an enormous amount of credit for looking at the situation honestly and maintaining a respectful participation. Because it was tough. It was tough on all of us.
Yeah, no, it's just so interesting. So I know you didn't use people, kind of outside consultants in the 2016 to 2019 timeframe, but who became your advisory board and what are your recommendations, the things that you did that you would do again and things you would say, hey, I would definitely do this differently in that 5-year buyout period?
We started the sales process with a brokerage called Generational Equity. I thought they were great people, but it didn't work out. And I don't know if I should blame their process, our company, or our chemistry, but Generational Equity I wouldn't use again. And that comes from my experience with this company and them, which nothing ever happens in a vacuum. There's a lot of participants, but I wouldn't use Generational Equity again. I would 100% use Tarsus again. Paul Bertrand and Ben Olson over at Tarsus were my mentors during the entire thing. So they helped me with the language, they helped me with the reasoning, they helped me with the sanity, they helped me have some guide rails. They showed me where the gutters were, where the points of no return were, the order of operations, which was amazing, when to engage an attorney, how deeply to go into a letter of intent. So Tarsus, we stayed with them. So for 2 years, they held my hand. I
Nice.
was in touch with them either in person or in touch with them weekly for 20 months straight.
Yeah.
So I definitely said, this is too hard to do on my own. And I really sought their opinion. The other party did not engage an attorney until the final months. I don't know if they think that that was a disservice to themselves or not. I think it was, but I had enough to consider on my own part.
Yeah. And do you think your timeline that you went through the process is the ideal timeline?
So if you chop off the whole generational equity where we're going to market to sell, put a pin in that and go, I'll say 21 months of us trying to buy the company ourselves.
Yeah.
I honestly, I thought it was really long, but it's when you look at average deal sizes right now, a $10 million deal is 12 months is fast,
Yeah.
16 to 24 months is normal.
Yeah.
And right now, I think you could have I think there are some 9 to 15 months deals out there that are $10 million,
Yeah.
but not much anymore.
Right.
So a year, plan on a year.
Yeah.
So with us, let me throw in a couple things. Silicon Valley Bank. So we got an SBA note through the 7A program, and the SBA guaranteed our note through our bank in Middle of Missouri. During that time, in the 1 year prior to closing, Silicon Valley Bank, remember that?
Right.
There were 4 bank failures after
Yep.
that. The
Right.
SBA and banking, it ground to a halt. This type of lending and M&A transactions where there was large banking pulls essentially stopped. And so we had that. So they're like, nobody's responding to our phone calls. Let's wait till May. So I would say 3-4 months was ground to a halt, which gave us a breather just to do business. Remember,
Right.
as a full-time job. I had 2 full-time jobs during this time. I was enormously stressed. When the banking started, when we realized that this was isolated and that this was not a banking pandemic, so to speak,
Right.
things picked up and it picked up again. And then there was government shutdowns, 3. The threat of a government shutdown has a 80% effect of a normal shutdown. So just the threat causes the wheels to begin to slow.
Mm.
So we navigated 3 of those. We're like, if we don't get this approval from the SBA by the 10th, we might as well wait 1 month. And
Wow.
that happened 3 times. So I would say the first 3 months of hold from Silicon Valley and another 90 days of kind of spinning our wheels caused 5 years to turn into 5 years and 2 months. I mean, it added
Yeah.
months to our. So I think we could have gotten it done in 12 to 14 months. It turned into 21.
You said the SBA 7/8 program. What is that? What is that?
7A,
Yeah,
7A,
7A.
like ABC.
Yeah. Okay.
So 7A is the SBA's guarantee program. So you don't deal with the SBA at all. You just deal with a lender who's approved to
Right.
lend the program.
Yeah.
A lot of people think you borrow directly from the SBA. You don't.
Right.
You're not on the phone with them. You don't deal with them. It's a relationship between the bank and the SBA.
Yeah.
And so if we default on the note, then the bank who lent us that money can be made whole through that guarantee program.
Yeah.
with the S.
Interesting. Talk about your personal journey and your wives and your partners through this. Kind of it must be like the roller coaster of emotions. So talk about that.
When we finally engaged with the attorney, he goes, look, best advice, keep a level head. You're going to have extreme highs and extreme lows on the exact same day or day after day. Try and keep a level head. And I grinned at him as if he was saying something. Oh, you probably tell all your clients this, but it turned out to be 100% true.
Right.
It was emotional. It was an emotional roller coaster. Suzanne has her own business, so she kind of dealt with some of the stories I would tell her. I would bring the frustrations home. She's more in the business now, but because she handles all the accounting. But Danny, I'm like, keep running the company. He's very much of a data and finance guru. And so I said, I need this type of report going back 3 years. So I would rely on him for reporting that the bank was requesting or helping me find documents. So I was in deal mode, and I'm like, Danny, can you run the company? And I relied on my managers to run the company as well as possible. I did bring in sales during that time, but yeah, I have a great team of managers, and Danny ran the company while I was doing this.
Yeah. So Scott, February 2024, basically a year ago, you now the buyout's done. We're now a year later. What were the learnings? Where are your focus areas now? What's the outlook now for RSM?
It was immensely gratifying, but it turned into the weeks right after. It felt like the dog who finally caught the car after years. And I'm like, wait, what do I do with this? Right. So now it's mine. All the success we can claim great credit for, not all of it, and all the failures we would definitely take all the blame for. So really the weight of it sunk in. We had deal costs on the books every month. That was, $10,000, $12,000 that we were paying out in consulting fees. And so that weighed down the company a little bit. We just paid our last deal cost just this month, which is great. So
Wow, congrats.
2024, yeah, thank you. 2024, actually, my partner said that to me. He said, hey, congrats on the last payment. I thought that was really nice of him to say that. By the way, we're still partners. We have some commercial real estate together. So
Oh, nice.
I talked to them throughout the week. But 2024 became a bit of this is bad to say, but a bit of a throwaway year. We thought there's a stub year, there was a corporate change. There's two tax returns, one at February 29th and one March 1 on. So it's a complicated tax year. It's difficult to explain, but I thought there's some receivables on the books. There is some bad debt on the books. Let's pile it all into 2024. Let's say we transact again in the future. I sell it, we merge it, whatever. Let's say that happened in 3 years, another corporate transaction. I want the look back period to be 27, 26, and 25. I don't want anybody to ever see 24 again. So let's pile all the secrets and dead ends in 2024. I'll tell the bank this is why we piled this debt into here. All totally legal and legit. But we got through the year. We're starting 2025 really clean and an amazing January. A ton of new customers, and it's just great. It feels so good that it's working.
Yeah.
And we're past our deal cost. So it's kind of like when you first buy your first house as a young couple, it's tight for a couple years until you grow into that payment, and
Right.
you kind of look back and laugh at that payment, but it's always tight, right? And that's what we did. We kind of bought our first house. But the other thing, during the transaction and now we have decided to niche down into an industry, and we picked construction contractors and subcontractors. We happen to be very good at it. It's our largest concentration in one industry. And Jeff, if someone comes to us nationwide outside of our home markets of Kansas and Missouri, and this happens every day, they're always in construction. So we don't get lawyers and insurance companies outside of Kansas and Missouri. Inside Kansas and Missouri, I have a network here. I have 1,000 contacts on LinkedIn. You might refer me some business. Hey, my buddy owns this company and needs some help. I'm always going to take that. So we have a little bit of a different mix in Kansas and Missouri.
Right.
If it's a great company, it's a great company. I'm going to work with them. But outside, so 80% of our new business is in construction.
Wow.
So that's been immensely gratifying to see work. And we have some new initiatives for construction and contractor. I'd love to have this conversation a year from now and talk about a new platform we're building for contractors.
Yeah. No, I love the focus. I know you and I are both Seth Godin fans, and he talked a lot about focus, right? No matter
Yeah.
what size company you are. So I love that. Scott, there's two groups of people I love helping with great leaders' advice like yours. One's that recent college graduate, going to go out and get their first job, start their professional career. What advice would you have for them?
Every job has a bit of a grind. Even if you're doing what you love, you're going to find 15, 20, 30% of it that just kind of sucks. Learn to power through and learn something every day. Even when you're grinding through some sort of routine, got to get your final numbers in. You got to document, the administration of your job. It's kind of like I heard someone say, I love music, but the business of music stinks, right?
Right.
And try and squeeze out as much of that creative and passion out of everything you do, but you got to find a way there's going to be a grind sometimes, and just be okay with that.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that advice. Second group is, for those that choose to, continue their career and actually lead a group of people on an org chart. So they, become a first-time manager. They got, 5, 6, 10 people on their team, whatever it is. What advice do you have for them as they begin that leadership journey?
I would say that under $1 million, you're in a numbers business. You have got to put numbers behind you. And over $1 million, you're in the people business. As a leader, I think under a million, you're inventing and getting the tires going. But over that, it's beyond you now. And you have got to develop, it's a constant development of leadership, of your leadership, of culture and people. So you're in the people business after $1 million. And even before that, I just like that kind of line in the sand. Think
Yeah.
of yourself, if you're a company over $1 million, develop your people to develop the company. Don't do it
Right.
yourself.
Yeah. That's great. Love that advice. Scott, thanks so much for coming on the corporate couch this morning.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Such a fun conversation with Scott. We've talked to a lot of different people, and it's just that career journey, and it's twists and turns, and sometimes it's a, just a slight twist, and sometimes it's a, hard right. He basically was a system admin. Then he gets into technology and coding a little bit, but had 2 stints at FreightQuote, a huge, great success startup company here in Kansas City back in the, I'm going to say 90s, that finally sold to C.H. Robinson, a big trucking company, but they were in the freight industry, less than truckload, LTL. He started with them. There was 20 people, went someplace else, came back. There were 700 people. He goes, yeah, well, the money was really good. And then he said, yeah, he under his breath, he goes, yeah, then they fired me. And then he went on. So I came back to it. I said, well, why'd they fire you? And he went through this, basically there was this beginning of a layoff process. But then he starts this company, Agile Core, basically taking in the trucking industries, I guess, all these receipts that truckers have, they can have a shoebox full of receipts. They had technology to take those and turn them into tax returns. And it's still a business today. Somebody bought them, and it's still going strong. And he was, probably in his early 30s when he started that. And then it was just a master class of being involved in, 1 management buyout, 2 successful mergers of companies, with companies he was in charge of or affiliated with at an executive level. And he also talked about, some of the mergers that never happened due to various reasons. Yeah. And then I loved his advice to people that become managers and have responsible for a group of people for the first time. And he said, if you're in a company that's under $1 million in annual revenue, you are a doer. You have to figure things out, innovate, make things happen, build things. You're a builder. And he goes, if you're over $1 million in revenue, you're in a people business. Develop your team, become the best leader you can, because your job is to develop the leaders under you. So you, as a whole, the sum, 1 + 1 = 3 thing, you build that your leadership skill set of the people underneath you, so you can do greater things together. So I just thought it was great advice, and Scott's company is obviously doing well, and I love their focus: construction, contractors, and subcontractors. Seth Godin would give him a gold star in terms of focus. So it just was a nice conversation. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a very interesting career path, a very interesting story. The guy obviously has a lot more advice that he could give us than what you guys had time for. I also like the idea that they found their niche. He's kind of like the Wendy's. Dave Thomas started Wendy's, and all these McDonald's was doing everything. And Dave Thomas said, "No, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to make the best hamburgers and nothing else. That's what we're going to do." And he built an empire based on that. And that's kind of what Scott's done. Is he said, we can't service everybody, but we know construction, we know contractors, we know subcontractors. Bang, that's going to be our business. And I think that's really interesting. I was amazed, and I shouldn't have been, so I'm just going to lay this out. I'm on the corporate couch in therapy right now. As a hyper introvert and a geeky nerdy person, I was taken aback a little bit by the fact that where he talked 2 or 3 times about a potential merger that was going to happen, and the merger never happened, and the reason it didn't happen was because of personality issues. And matter of fact, one time I wrote this down. He said the chemistry wasn't there. My nerdiness kind of insists that no, wait. The company's either worth buying or it's not. It's valued at a certain amount. The income to profit ratios are, certain things.
Yeah, you think in terms of zeros and ones.
Yeah, yes. Everything in my life is binary, right? And I would have a hard time even acknowledging the fact that there are soft issues out there like personality. I need to listen to interviews like Scott's every once in a while to reinforce in my binary brain that there are other soft issues like personality, like chemistry, that can sometimes make or break a business deal. And so that's the thing that I kind of came away with. It was a little humbling to think that I've still got learning to do. How about that?
Right. Yeah, we all do. Joe, any final thoughts about Scott's episode?
Yeah, my final thoughts are this. Do you know what kind of doctor Dr. Pepper is?
No idea.
He is a physician.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.